Okay, this is a demo for the lesson Simple Landscape, behind which is really the idea. I'll teach you a few basic things in this, brushing techniques, how to handle color for highlight and shadow, and also distance, overall color harmony, and basically how to build a painting. With those few skills, it'll enable you to paint many other things of your own choosing. But this is a really simple landscape. First, your tools. I only have acrylic here, but tempera paint is actually better for doing those natural textures of the landscape. You have that in the classroom. So the colors, a medium yellow, a deep red. You have what we call ultramarine blue, very violet blue, which you can temper that with turquoise, which you have. Ideally, for sky, you want this cobalt blue, but I don't have that in tempera. So I'm going to temper it with what's called phthalo blue. It'll make it less violet. Orange, purple, or violet. I don't have green. We're going to make our own green. Black and white, and brown, or what's called here burnt umber. Okay. For brushes, you want a variety of flat brushes, meaning they're flat, they've been pressed there, the ferrule has a crease in it, and from that point of view it's flat. And round brushes, like that, different sizes, fairly stiff. Palette knife and vine charcoal to draw with, rather than graphite. It brushes off easier. There's my palette, I have a glass palette, and I'll next go to the sketch. All right, so here is the sketch that I'm going to work with. Pretty vague. I've done it in charcoal, and what I have is a sky, land, and sort of a majority of land, a minority of sky, a distant hill, a tree with a cast shadow, and a building with a cast shadow. And that's basically all you need right now. In fact, for the first step, really you just need, where's my horizon line? Okay, so I'm going to do some sky here. Mix up a little bit of paint. I pour the paint separately. I don't ever do one into another. Remember I said that was a little too violet for a proper sky. So this, I'm hoping, a little bit will de-violetize it. How's that for a term? All right. What we're going to do in the sky is called a gradient. So a little bit from here, blue, a little bit there from white, and it gradates from a deeper blue to a lighter blue, which you will see during the day, any day. The sky always gets lighter at the horizon. This is tempera paint, so I need to thin it a little bit as I work. And I'm putting some water into it, okay? All right, so I'm going to go only to there with the blue and start in a little bit with the white here in the opposite direction. The white is right at the horizon. I'm painting right over my tree because I want the sky to show through the tree. All right, so now I have the two colors on there, and I could blend them to be a little more gentle. If you get to the paint, you're trying to blend it and it's dry or sticky, a little spritz of water can help loosen it up, okay? Can't do that too much because we're only painting on paper here. This is watercolor paper. But it helps in a pinch, okay? If you want to do some sort of streaky thing, like, you know, a hazy day, this is the time. Put some streaky clouds in there. Don't get into cumulus clouds and sunsets at this point. They're more complicated than you think. They're not just simply puffy little things. So just go with that. All right. Next, using that same blue, I'm going to do what I'm calling the distant hills. To create distance, things get washed out at a distance, and even bluer. They lose their saturation. It's due to the atmosphere. The water in the atmosphere disperses the light. I could either add red to that blue to make a sort of Purple Mountain's Majesty. I'm going to try a little yellow to make a green distant hill. And to keep the harmony, I'm using the same blue that I did for the sky. Okay. And I'm using the palette knife rather than brushes. It blends much more thoroughly than a brush. And I'm going to hover it over there and say, how does that look? I'm going to say it looks too dark and also too alive, meaning too vibrant. You can cut down the vibrancy of a color by adding its opposite. So the opposite of green is red, and it'll neutralize it a little bit. All right. So I'm going to end up here with a gray-green for that distant hill. I could use this brush. Be a little bit irregular with your line because it's nature, okay? So I'm keeping that edge very sharp and then just painting down to fill in the space underneath. You'll see why in a minute. And while it's still wet, if you've maybe not mixed your paint all that thoroughly and you have like different versions of it around, you could kind of wipe those into it, or a little white here and there, or a little red to make a little more variation. Throw some brown in it if you wish. Okay, just so you had like a little bit of variation in the sky, you could have a little variation in your hill. Okay. Okay, we've done the sky and the land. Now I've drawn in a little more carefully a new horizon line, and you can see it overlaps the hill. I've drawn in the house again and the tree. Again, pretty vague, because the tree is going to grow, as you'll see. But more importantly is a cast shadow for each. It's a little bit of a fiction here. A strong cast shadow would assume that the sun is right here, really bright. It's not, but I think just for the sake of learning how to do highlight and shadow, I'm going to throw it in there for that reason. Okay. Maybe later we could strengthen the white in here. Whoops. Lost that pencil. We could even do it right now if you're thinking. Just make it a little bit brighter in this area. pretty lame, but good for now. Okay. All right, so let's mix some greens. What you want to do is, again, include this sort of blue in your green down here for the sake of color harmony, but you want to vary it a little bit so that you've got foliage a little bit different than grass, etc. Okay, so, but I think a nice green anyways is the blue, violet, and yellow. So here you mix up sort of a medium green. And I want you to divide it so that half of it you can use in the highlight areas and half in the shadow areas. The trick is to make the two greens, I hope you can see this, make the two greens look related, like that is a shadow version of that. Okay? All right, so let's first paint in the larger areas here. Again, I'm going to paint right through my tree, except for like the trunk. How's that? We'll save the trunk. And I want a sharp edge on the horizon line there. We're imagining this house living on the precipice of a great valley, I guess. Leaving shadow area. It looks like I'm running out of paint, so I'll have to address that later. But maybe if I spray it a bit with water, I can spread around the paint. Okay, so that's a nice John Deere ready lawn. Okay. I want to put in the shadows, cast shadows. So here's my darker paint here. And I'm doing it while this paint is still wet so that I can sort of have soft edges. You might notice that cast shadows only have sharp edges right close to the object from which they come. After that, they're kind of fuzzy, like smoke coming out of a candle after it's extinguished. Right, and the tree, really it would be a spotty cast shadow because the sunlight comes through the tree, the leaves and things. It's not as solid as an umbrella. So first I'm putting this in like that, sort of roughly. But also I'm going to then take a round brush and go back to this lighter green and sort of speckle in the lighter color, as if the sunlight had just came through and sort of dappled the lawn with color. Okay. That's good. I'll turn the camera off and then fix these little things. Okay, what we're going to do in this segment is the tree trunk, which you can see I drew in a little more carefully, and the two sides of the house or building. You can see I drew those in a little more carefully. Okay, so trees, they are not brown, contrary to popular opinion. Think of tree trunks as gray first, and then tinted with either brown or green, especially around here, New England. A lot of the older tree trunks have a lot of moss and lichen on them, and they can easily become green. But I think if I made a green tree trunk there, it would blend in too much. So I'm using black and white and burnt umber or brown, but just a little. And I'm going to keep it on the dark side because this is overall sort of dark, and that part of the trunk is in shade. You know, it's hidden by the leaves. Come on, black. This is interesting. If you can see this, this turns out to be a rather weak black, ivory black, and I'm putting in a good amount, but it doesn't affect the color all that much. Okay, I'm going to go with this, just not so to delay you. In all these things, I'm always going to go back afterwards to touch up things. I may add a darker brown. Okay, so I have another flat brush, and I'm going to just pretend I'm growing the tree. The bottom I leave rather zigzaggy because of grass. Grass kind of grows up around there. Okay. What we're going to do is add the foliage on top of this. So you don't have to be too fancy about it, but it does help to have branches there because, you look through a tree and you could see not only sky and background, but the branches themselves. Okay. Good enough for now. It's really all I wanted to do. Okay. These little sort of got onto my green there. It's still white there. I'm going to go back afterwards and fix those up. So not to fret over them now. Okay, the house. Let's wipe that off. Think first, what color do I want to make it? Red has been pretty popular, the red barn, and so we're going to make a red and then separate it into a highlight area. In fact, here it would be the other side of the barn, but we'll make it up. We'll say this is the highlight area, and then a shadow area. Okay, so let's make the red first. Probably a little too dark, for that. You might say, okay, I like that red. And now I have to get a lighter version and a darker version. So the lighter version, normally add white to it. See how that goes. If you have a sunset or a really warm time of day where the light is really warm, you'd also add yellow to it. That wouldn't be crazy to do that. And then I want to get a darker version of the red. Again, to darken it, try first the opposite color. And the opposite of red is green. So I'll make that green first. And what it does is if you notice on the color wheel in the classroom, the middle of the color wheel is gray, which is a neutralized version of any color you want. So what I'm doing is going through the color wheel, adding the most complete opposite of red, and hoping it'll dull it down to not be so vibrant. What I can see is this is a really serious red. It's cadmium red, and these colors are not very strong in dulling it down. But I think that could work there. All right, it's probably a little too dark. I'll add a little white to it like I did this. Okay. So here's the thing. To the extent if you have difference here, you want to have the same difference here. If you want to call that a 5% change, have this also a 5% change. Let's give it a shot. Again, we can adjust these colors afterwards. You know, don't spend all day trying to mix the perfect color. You want to put it on there, see what it looks like, and judge it after that. Like this, for instance, looks too gray or too blue to me. So we'll play with that later. Using a flat brush and just carefully using the front of the brush, putting it right in there, wiggling a little bit to get into the textures. And I'm not moving my hand around, I'm moving the paper around in order to get those different angles. Okay. The roof, by the way, we'll deal with later when we do the foliage on the tree. Okay. Take that off. Let's try some of the darker stuff. Maybe you could see this. If you want to get really fancy, go a little darker up in here where the eave of the roof shadows the side. This paint's a little thick, so I'm going to put some water into it. And you could be rough on that bottom edge too, again, because of grass. I'll come out there a little bit further. Okay. It's not like your bright red barn, but neither is this the, bright green grass. So I think it works okay on there. And we could come back to it later if we want to do more or add details and whatnot. It's okay that the charcoal shows through there because it can just be brushed away. Right? So I'll stop the video there, and then next we'll do the roof and treetop. Okay, we got the tree trunk and the building there. First going to do this easy thing, the roof. Going to start with gray and add a little blue because correspondence, we're going to call it. Roofs, as you well know, come in all sorts of colors and shingles and things. I guess I'm thinking of a tin roof. Do something that'll look nice within your composition. Okay. So here's some gray and blue. And again, how does it look? It looks too dark to me. looks too much like the sky. Let's throw in a little brown. Good. Okay, so I'll do that. Let me get again a flat brush. You might notice I've got a little bit of overhand here on the corner. It doesn't line up exactly on the corner like it's the top of a container of some sort, well sealed. Also, again, I'm moving the paper rather than my hand. Okay. The paint is a little thin right now just because these brushes are wet. I just had washed them. Just this one odd thing. You see the little leg down there, which is on the far side and would be shaded by the eave of the roof. So I'm going to do it in the darker version, just very slightly. There, and it helps to give a feeling of space there. Let's see, I got to do a little bit here too. Okay. All right, for the foliage, this is the more fancier, more interesting thing. We're going to switch to round brushes. And we're also going to make a new green. We don't want to duplicate this green, this blue. I'm sorry, we don't want to duplicate this green, and that was made with this blue. So let's try a new blue, or just a different proportion. So here's a cobalt blue and some yellow, and you may have green out of the bottle that you can use, but be careful, the green out of the bottle is really green and will jump right off your page. Something I always call it the map of Ireland green. It's meant to be calmed down. Okay, so here's a decent green. I'm going to make more of it simply because just experience seem to always want more. Right, so that's like the middle, okay? It's a little bit more yellow than this, and what I'm going to do is kind of divide this in half and make a highlight version and then a shadow version. So back to the white. And warm it up a little bit with a little more yellow. Okay. And in the darker version, that could serve okay. Let me see what I have there already. Again, you don't want to get too different in your percentages. So let's give it a try. All right. Round brush. And what I'm going to do is work the bottom up. Assuming the light is coming from above, as it is, the leaves on the outside, or the lower end, like the bottom of a bowl, would be a little darker. So I'm going to kind of dot and dance the brush around, letting some of the background show through, and the branches too. Okay. Think clumps. clumps of leaves, okay? And some will go like behind the branches as we see them, the other side of the tree, okay? And again, I'm leaving some see-through holes there, and I'm kind of not, I'm doing fewer and fewer marks as I go up. I'm going to leave that for the lighter tone. Okay, let's leave that like that for now. All right. My other round brush, here it is. I'm going to go with the lighter green. And kind of the same thing, I want to let the sky show through. But thinking clumps again. And I'm overlapping the two. So while the light green is kind of dense up at the top, it thins out as I move down into the tree. And what I'm trying to do is get a feeling of roundness of the canopy of the tree. Trees, like clouds, you can work them a long, long time, getting slight variations in the values of the greens, the colors of the greens, and whatnot. So if it's taking you a long time, don't fret. That's how it goes, because there's so much detail in there. And I'm kind of shaping the tree at the same time. All right. All right. Basically, this is it, the finished simple landscape. But that's never the last step. So on the document here, you'll think, I think it's step 11, which says, put the painting now far away and look at it and say, is it all in balance? Do things stand out too much or not enough? Is it interesting? Is there enough in the picture? Do I want to put more variations? And for myself, I'm going to go back in and work this bark a little bit with some lighter texture. Okay, just some lines. I'm probably going to lighten the grass as it moves back. It seems to me a little too drastic, this to that. So I may add some lighter strokes of grass up there, just like the way the sky has a gradient. Do that. And I'm going to continue to get denser on the tree so that it really feels heavy and big. Like this is a serious trunk. You'd expect more of a canopy on top. Maybe work a little more with the shadow too. If the tree grows, the shadow should also grow. The house, maybe I'll go a little lighter in the roof to give it a little more happiness. And who knows what else? Maybe there's little white things I want to cover up. But always leave a day for fine-tuning, as we call it. Okay? I hope that's good. See you later.